that's okay. First of all, welcome to the workshop. Now, I hope you're all enjoying your day at the Scottish Older People's Assembly and enjoyed the morning presentations. I've got a few wee things to tell you about, first of all, before we get started. And the first one is that Brian over there in the checked shirt, he's the techie guy, and he is going to enable us all to have a conversation together, which is great because I think, can you hear me down at the bottom beautifully? Yes, I'm aware of that. So that's great. It means that when you're speaking, when you indicate the wish to speak, then Brian's in charge of putting on your microphone for you. So you don't have to touch the console in front of you, and that means that everyone can be heard, which is brilliant. And I wanted to introduce the two other people who are involved in the workshop. First of all, my name, I should tell you, is Susan Shippey, and I work at the City of Edinburgh Council in the Health and Social Care Department, and I'm particularly concerned with poverty and health inequality policy within the council. And I've got two very able helpers here for the session ahead. And the first one is Alan Sidaway, and I'll let Alan introduce himself to you.
Yes, some of you know me through the trade union and through SOPA and other organisations. I've been involved with SOPA right from the very beginning, and in fact I was involved with this in the 3 or 4 years before it became SOPA, when it was done by SPA, Scottish Pensions Association, very well organised, with people that have now gone to the great pensioner in the sky, you know, George Henderson and a few others. It's been a gruelling 4 years, but we're slowly getting there. But we seem to be discussing lots of things, and we want to really have ideas to come forward so that we can really get these going on, because so many things get stuck. But in the last 3 or 4 years, things have got moving, and we're slowly getting moving things on. So I think that's about all we've got to say. So
great, thank you, Alan. And Sarah here is going to be the scribe. Do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm Sarah Masson. I'm the Parliamentary Assistant for Christian Allard, who's the MSP for the North East of Scotland. So I'll be trying to keep a note of everything that we're all saying today, so we can report it back to the within the plenary session.
Excellent, thank you, Sarah. So much as it would be lovely to go round the room and all introduce ourselves, I think I managed to speak to everyone, which is great. And when you speak, if you could identify yourself and say your name and where you're from, then that would be really super. We have quite a distinct task for the workshop today. And you heard Tom Burney say that there's no such thing as a free lunch, that you're expected to work here this afternoon. And so our task ahead for the next hour is to, first of all, we're going to hear from Alan on the priorities that have come out from the campaign trail. You saw the map of all the different meetings that SOPA has been having over the year to gather evidence from lots of different older people's groups across the country. And there are some very distinct themes that come out. So we're going to hear about those. And then we have to pick a couple to focus on. Now, secretly, somebody has tried to put you all in a group together because you're interested in the same kind of things. So we'll try and find out what those things are in particular, and we have to focus on 2 issues during the workshop today. After we've identified those issues, we'll take a little step back, because it is thought that many of you will have campaigning experience, not necessarily on the issues that we choose to talk about, but on other issues too. And SOPA really wants to know what makes a good campaign. What have you found that works? And we'll look a wee bit at that. And then we'll get back to the 2 priorities that we've spoken about and try and make sure that everyone has their views heard on those 2 issues. And by the end of the session, we are supposed to have 2 campaigning actions, 2 actions that SOPA can get their teeth into from this workshop. And Alan will feed those back at the plenary session, which is at 3 o'clock. And so what we need to make sure is that the priorities, the things that we agree, are clear and they can be easily conveyed to the rest of our friends in the plenary session. So the final thing to do before we hear from Alan is just to talk about what's called here a conversation agreement. And it's just some ground rules or some way of developing a good foundation for us working together for the next hour. Because it's not very long, is it? Because there's lots of issues out there and everyone round the table is bursting with ideas as I went round. And so it's just to say that to achieve this task within the limited time we've got, we have to be respectful towards each other. And one of the things I think that means is trying really hard not to talk over somebody else once they're starting, and be self-disciplined, trying to keep what you say quite short. And if somebody has the same idea as you, nod your head and agree with them rather than start a new point, because we've got that point and it'll be up on the flip chart. So I just wanted to check out with you all that you're happy with those kind of ground rules, the conversational agreement. Yes? Okay. Well, that's great. Super. Thank you very much. Well, we'll hear from Alan now as to what SOAP has been finding out this year about the key priorities for older people.
Right. As you've seen, the 6 priorities are on this paper here. Number 1 is housing and community safety. It's a shortage of property that can be for housing and accessible for older people. We want it to be safe environments for these people and a limited police presence. There's lack of wardens, we've said that earlier on, and various other bits and pieces. And the campaign is SOPA wants to call on the government to improve housing. Now, number 2 is health and social care. Older people are not integrated joint boards. We've got isolation, loneliness, depression, threat of life, discriminatory, spam, people knocking on your doors that shouldn't be there, and various other things. And undervaluing paid and non-carers is another thing. The quality of shortfalls in government's care, in the care and community inequality. And the possible campaign is we urgently require for older people to be integrated into these joint systems in Scotland so that we can all have a better quality of life when we consider what these designing services are. Number 3 is all about transport, travel and the environment, and the lack of range of transport, especially in the evenings. I mean, even in my village, 5:30 is the last bus. So if you take a bus out, you can't get back. And that is unfortunate. So, and the parking is expensive. Well, in Dumfries and Galloway, they've done away with parking charges. You have a card that you put in your desk and you just stay there for the amount of time that you're allotted. So that's another way forward. Including some hospitals, in some areas you have to pay to park in a hospital when you're going for treatment, and that is wrong. So SOPA calls on the Scottish Government to develop and get this comprehensive strategy for older people. Number 4 is community empowerment. Now, there's poor understanding of community power empowerment, so we've got to learn to understand that, what the laws are, and lots of intergenerational attitudes and actions. Older people working with younger people and younger people working with older people, and not have to do CBR checks because there's a whole crowd of you. Some people get so tied up with CBR checks when older people are trying to help younger people, and that's something we've got to really get across to people, that we're not a threat to younger people and younger people are not a threat to us. Number 5 is retirement, pensions and money matters. We're all concerned about the food, funerals and everything else that goes on. So how far does your money go? How far does your pension go? Again, we're talking about the risk of scam phone calls, mailings, emails and all the other things that crop up on your computer and all the rest of it. And the last one is communication and information. This is computer use difficulties for some people. You know, we were talking about earlier about the senior rail card. If you go along to the station, you can buy a yearly senior card for £30, but if you happen to have a computer, you can buy one for £70 for 3 years, which saves you £10. But people who haven't got a computer don't have that communication, and that again is wrong. So that's something else SOPA's got to look at and try to get corrected. So there's lots of resources and range of availability, and the computer's a very good thing, but people have got to be there to train people on computers. Now, libraries are very good, but not everybody wants a computer. So we've got to find other ways that they're not, people, don't have to pay more for their electricity because they haven't got a computer, which again is wrong. Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. Now, does anyone have any questions on the priorities that have come from SOPA? We've got a few minutes just to kind of clear up any questions about the 6 priorities.
Can I just mention that SOPA did realise, and it was pointed out to SOPA, that since the bus pass, the elderly community has achieved nothing at all. They've all become talking points. So SOPA decided to make bullet points, and that's why we've gone for these 6 issues, so as we can concentrate on those 6 issues, so as that we, from our different elderly forums, can go back and say, SOPA achieved this, SOPA achieved that. The only thing we can say to the elderly today is that the SSA were the starting group for the pressure put on for the bus pass, and that's the last thing as pensioners we've ever achieved. So it's high time that we were prioritising, get 5 bullet points, for example. There's a lot more issues than these 6 bullet points. But if we take those to start with and work on them so that we can get some benefit from politicians and achieve a result for any of these would be an achievement.
Yes, that's a really brilliant way to start, actually. Thank you very much. That's exactly what we're trying to do in the workshop.
Can you have your names, please?
Sorry.
Sorry.
I know Jimmy normally does.
My name's Jimmy Miller, and I'm a member of the Salkits Elderly Forum and the Joint Elderly Forums in North Ayrshire. Also, I'm a member of the committee of the GMB retired members. I'm on the committee of SPF, and I'm a life member of the Scottish Seniors Alliance.
Hi, I'm Jim Dixon from West Lothian. It's just really to follow on from the bit about the concessions, because Alec was really playing up the bit about concessions, but it's hopeless having concessions if you live in rural areas about buses that are not regulated. And I don't know if if this organisation is going to be involved in talking up about the regulation of buses to actually deal with this group of people who are from rural Perthshire. And I'm out in West Lothian, and the whole thing is there that the east-west buses are always going there because they're profitable and the larger companies are getting their money out of them, but there's not really any work being done to deal with the regulation of the local routes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions before we go on to picking our issues? I can feel one in the room already, but any other questions about the 6 priorities? Okay. Well, I think we'll go on and decide on the 2, because I think it was a very good point from over here. Thank you, Jim. That unless you focus down, then it's very difficult to get those in power to do anything, because it's a scattergun approach. And what we're trying to do here today is to focus down on a couple of issues out of these 6, even though we know that the 6 are cut down and they're compressed. With this workshop for the next hour is going to be discussing 2 issues. And so would anyone like to suggest an issue, and we'll kind of sound that out around the room.
Chair, this particular session here is retirement pensions and money matters. Right. Now, can I just mention that actually that number 2 is part of that. The reason I'm saying this is, well, it's come to money matters. If I just read actually a statement here just to tell you the point I'm trying to make here. It's a direct payments absolute bombshell. Now, I don't know if anybody here has actually received from the government yet the option of actually paying direct payments to carers. But if you haven't, it's important to realise that thousands of pensioners who receive money for their care through direct payments may face a shock in the next few weeks when they receive notification from the pensions regulator that they are legally obliged to pay into the pensions of their carers. The change arises from the introduction of the new auto-enrolment pensions, under which all employers are required to pay 3% of salary into a pension scheme. But those receiving a direct payment may not realise that under the CARE Act of 2014, they have certain responsibilities and obligations those they employ. When an individual chooses to employ staff to provide care services, local authorities should give clear advice as to the responsibilities, which include issues such as wages, statutory payments, tax, national insurance and pensions for their employee. The Department of Health has confirmed that employers, including direct payment holders, are required to comply with the duty to automatically enrol eligible workers into a qualifying workplace pension scheme and to meet the minimum contributions required by law. And I feel it is quite possible that many pensioners do not realise the implications of direct payments and may want to revert back to care being organised by local authority. And obviously this raises really serious concerns about pensioners using money for their care to pay for the pensions of care staff or to employ a third party to deal with issues such as tax, national insurance and pensions. As far as I know, all pensioners have not been informed of this, and it's quite a serious thing. Just like I'll give you an example. If Mrs Smith next door has been given the option to get her care money to hire her own care staff, and Mrs Jones next door is going to do it for 20 quid, and Mrs Stingley says, right, that's 20 quid to you and 20 quid to me, and they're on Road Street, 2 years down the road, they're going to get a bill from the taxman because they are now employers. And under law, they're entitled to stay. Yeah. I don't think, and I really, really worry that pensioners are now being involved in the pitfalls here.
Well, yeah, that sounds very interesting. I've got another point here. Thank you.
Christine from Through the Pensioners Forum, and we're also Civil Servants Pensioners Alliance. I'll go back to this point. We were at an SPF AGM in Kilmarnock recently, and I happened to corner, I couldn't get the microphone to do it formally, but I spoke to Ken McIntosh about this very subject. His answer to me was, he was the Labour candidate in Scotland for the leadership. He told me that you didn't have to become an employer. You could insist that the local authority remain as the employer for exactly all the points you're making. Inside the Civil Servants Pensioners Alliance, our executive committee have just recently, in fact 2 days ago, made the direct decision on this point not to have any employee. Our Scottish Secretary up until recently was a paid employee, and going into 2017 with all the encumberment that the government are forcing upon us when we become employers, we've decided not to go that route. Our National Executive Seminar AGM is starting tomorrow, and this is one of the subjects we'll be raising. And I'm extremely concerned for every single pensioner in Scotland. This is terrifying, and I don't think anybody knows the implications of what the government are about to impose on us. And I think we must act regarding this.
Thank you. Now, just to be clear, even though the money issue, retirements, pensions and money matters, is number 5, we are not required to choose that as a topic for this workshop. These are the priorities in priority order that came out from the SOPA work. But would we be interested in focusing on, it sounds to me like what I've heard so far is transport and the money matters one. So is there anyone who's unhappy with those two choices? Sir?
Can I give a word about funerals?
I think because funerals would come under the finance, so if we're going to choose finance as a topic, can we come back to the point about funerals then? Yeah. Thank you. What was the first one? The first one was transport. That's what we started off discussing, but we have to, it's unfortunate, but we can't discuss all 6.
Wait a minute. In free, it's got transport, travel.
Could you tell us who you are? Hi.
Sorry?
Could you tell us who you are, please?
Sorry,
your name.
Robin Lever. In number 3, you've got transport, travel and environment. I believe that's all one subject. So it's free, it's all that. And you're going on to Number 6. 5.
Number 5. We have to pick 2 of the topics.
Number 5 on here is the number of your room, not the
No. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. What I'm talking about is the subject matter is you've got a 3 and you've got a subject, which is 3 items.
Yes.
It's not the way I understood it, Alan. I understood that if you put down for that, like which I did, it's in room 5. That's what we understand, rightly or wrongly, that the subject we should be, or the subjects we should be discussing here, are subjects under number 5.
All right. Well, that's. Is that everyone's? Can I just check whether that's everyone's understanding?
That's why I wondered why it was through the whole spiel to start
Oh
with.
well,
I
do you
thought,
know
well,
that
we
makes
can
it
read
very
that.
simple? Is everyone happy to discuss retirement, pensions, and money matters?
Yes.
Great. Right. Let's get started then.
What's the second one?
Well, we don't have to discuss. Glenda will not beat me over the head if we don't
Well, you
discuss
might get two issues
topics.
out of retirement money
I'm
matters.
sure we will.
Funerals
I'm sure we
being
will.
one, and
I'm
something else.
very happy to take that, and I wasn't aware of that, and I do apologise because I actually discussed with Glenda changing the order of the thing, so I am surprised that that's the way it's worked out, but that's wonderful. So let's start with Willie on the funeral issues.
Dundee Pensioners Forum. It's on, as I said, this matter of funerals. We in Dundee have a crematorium, which was £830 just a year ago. They've now put it up to £930, £100 in a year. Now, we are at a stage in Dundee Pensioners Forum, as a campaigning body, we've already spoken at the hydroelectric on energy costs. We've been on the streets in Perth as well. And we think now in Dundee we should be taking direct action and actually picketing the crematorium in Dundee. For the simple reason that people out with Dundee, they've got to make arrangements for travel costs to go to Dundee for a crematorium. And I know that's only one part of a funeral, is a crematorium, but Dundee is one of the highest crematorium costs in Scotland. And we think it's an absolute disgrace that it should happen to anybody in a situation, an elderly person. Now we've got, as I say, there's an awful lot of young persons are actually dying through suicides and various other things that people are now putting in dire straits because of funerals. And we think it's time, we've actually discussed it at Dundee Pensioners Forum, that we should be taking direct action now and actually picketing the crematorium in Dundee. It's not been decided yet, but I'm pretty sure that there will be a situation where we'll be doing that.
Right. John had a point.
Hello, John McGivern, Civil Service Pensions Alliance Chair for Scotland Branch, also on the SPF Executive Committee. Sorry, what was your name again? Willie Shield. Willie, who exactly would you picket at a crematorium in Dundee?
It's a private company that was actually handed over from the council to this private company, and it's changed hands twice or three times in that time.
Do you not feel, though, that by picketing a crematorium, are you actually going to block funerals going in?
Well, these things will have to be decided, but I think it's now time that somebody's got to take some form of direct action.
I mean, whilst I agree with direct action in this case, to be seriously honest about it, I wouldn't like anybody picketing a funeral of mine.
No, stress to the family.
The stress to the family would be absolutely astronomical, and you could actually put somebody's life in risk, an elderly person's life at risk, by putting them through that stress. I accept what you're saying, I accept something has to be done. But I think in this case you must find an alternative.
Well, we thought at first we would actually apply to the crematorium and ask for a meeting with them.
Yeah.
But if we didn't get any satisfaction, then we'd take further actions.
Okay.
Which, as I say, that's obviously extreme, but that's
It sounds a bit, yeah.
that's the way we're going.
Okay.
This is a bonus, always been a bone of contention of mine. When you go to the government and you talk about national health, you keep getting this mantra the same. It's from the cradle to the grave. Right? Well, it's obviously not. It's to the cradle till you die. Because the minute you die, it goes into public ownership, i.e. private business. I feel that government should be actually standing on that thing and saying, you say, no, it didn't come from us. It was their words, from the cradle to the grave, we'll look after you. Well, obviously it doesn't. Because the minute you die, you start paying. It sparks going again. So that's a thing I would put to these people as well. You say it's from a cradle to a grave, so stand up and commit yourself to your commitments.
Can I ask if this is an issue for across the country? Because we've got quite a lot of people from different parts of the country. I guess crematorium services will be provided differently in different local authorities. Is that right? So, but are the issues the same?
It's not just, with due respect, it's not just crematoriums. It's funerals. The price in general of funerals. That's why we've suddenly got the ump now. They've gone beyond it now. They've drawn you've crossed the line, I think, with the prices, and yet the stress it puts on the people you leave behind. As you say, there's people committing suicide over this.
They could make no justification for the hike that they're putting on, on funerals. As I say, crematorium is only one small part of a funeral.
Yeah.
But it's a big part now for lots of people.
Yeah. I understand that even if you're arranging a funeral, the actual people who are doing the arrangements for you, which you're glad they're able to do for you, they're actually asking before the funeral takes place for the full fund paid in front. The funeral doesn't go ahead if it's not paid in front. So if it's a son or a daughter seen to a member of the family, then that son and daughter has to pay that funeral, because even if the family that died, the person that died, has funds, it's not available right away to them.
Yes,
so
I know
the
that.
funding has to come from somebody. Now, what happens if you're on your own as an elderly person in a home, perhaps, who doesn't have somebody to come and stand up for them? There's lots of indications that make things difficult for lots of people.
Yes.
So the gentleman's idea of having some benefit that would be available to everybody who is attending to a funeral arrangement is perhaps the way round it.
Thank you. I've had our other Dundonian colleague. You had something to say, and then Christine.
I don't want to mirror what the lady said, but when we had the undertakers in to give us a breakdown of the cost, they're looking for £1,900 up front to cover the initial expenses. That's what they're asking for.
And I think we've heard that the bereavement grant, even if you're lucky enough to get it, wouldn't cover that. That was this morning, was £1,500.
It's not the person that dies that gets a grant. It has to be somebody that's on benefits that claims the grant.
Yes.
Or a brother or sister or whatever. It's them that have to claim it. And what the benefit grant is now doesn't go near covering the funeral. We have a place in Dundee where it's called Craig Owl, and they give you information where the girl was able to cut it from £1,900 down to £500. They're saying, why order a limousine if your family have cars? Use your own cars, order your own flowers, put your own bit on the paper. That's what was coming through, even with the care plans.
And do you think we're talking then about funeral companies putting undue pressure on people to use lots of different services? Is that what we're saying?
Sorry, Chair, they're driving them to sharks, money lenders, Provident. They're driving them into debt. People and people just can't afford to pay it.
Yeah. So it's not just about the costs; it's about the companies pressuring people to have more facets to the funeral, more expensive components. Christine, sorry, you were wanting to say something.
Talking about people on benefits, it's come to my ears pretty recently because I have two good friends who are florists, and they're highly employed by funerals. But one shocking statistic came to me that people on benefits, and there seems to be no ceiling on the cost of flowers. So I question that as to why someone, I'm not being discriminatory by this statement, but why allow someone on benefit, there's no ceiling on flowers, and some of these floral arrangements at funerals are huge. And they're not inexpensive because they're coming from abroad. So I really would question the type of money being used on specific items like flowers if a person doesn't have the wherewithal to pay for that themselves. I'm disturbed with the fact that there's no ceiling.
Yes.
Chair, that you took about the actual funeral directors. I have a case, no, I don't personally have a case, but know of a case in Salkets where a member of the family died and was finding it hard to meet the payments and was under pressure from the director to pay up when another, sadly, member of his family died. And of course, he then went to the director and says, can I have any help here? Can I add that onto what owe you before? No. And that body lay in the mortuary for 2 or 3 weeks longer until sometimes you got that you can imagine what that put on the family.
I'm Margaret, I'm from Perth. I just was going to ask the same thing. Just a few minutes ago, someone said they had to put £1,900 up front. Now, I cannot understand how they can do that if there's someone that's got to go and get benefit. And also, the person that is claiming for the person that has sadly died, they're obviously the person who would have received the benefit because, I mean, the brother could be a millionaire. So it's bound to, as we know, claiming benefits don't happen overnight. They take forever. So you're not going to tell me, because I know people, you know, of people who are in receipt and have people die, and I don't know if funerals been held up more than a week. So there must be some way round this, that the undertakers cannot hold up a funeral until these benefits are through. But if the other person's got, but I know it's not easy. Getting any benefit isn't easy, but there has to be something. And I quite agree with the lady in the flowers. Yes, some of the floral arrangements you see are just astronomical, you know, really.
But what I'm hearing is there's a lot of agreement round the table about the fact that the cost of funerals is spiralling and that SOPA should get the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government, to have a look at things. And so I wonder if I could read out to you, because I think we've got time to discuss certainly another issue, whether it's under the Retirement Pensions and Money Matters scheme or not. So the campaign action is actually on the back of this. If you all look at this document here with the photos on the front, the campaign action that is suggested to us is on the back. And what I'd like to do is to see if we, in this room, agree with that. So,
can I just put another fly into the ointment? A lot of undertakers are pushing people to have prepayment funerals. They've got your money perhaps for 30 years and then they say, oh, well, it won't go up in price. But do you agree with that's the correct way forward?
I checked this out just weeks ago, and the reason I checked it out was I had an experience where a gentleman died and he said to his niece, everything before I go, everything is taken care of, this is the solicitor it holds and this is my funeral plan. But when they went to look at the funeral plan, which he thought covered everything that he had put in his will, it only covered certain items. It didn't cover the transport. It didn't cover flowers. It only covered certain items. One of the items that didn't cover was if the ground had to be opened, it was at the cost at the time of opening the ground. So 30 years before, when he maybe took it out, it would be £20–30. Now it's £400 or £500. And so even these funeral plans are a bit of a scam.
Right, well that's very interesting, thank you. So our campaigning action, as suggested by SOPA, but we can now amend if we wish, is as the cost of funerals spirals, SOPA calls on the Scottish Government to explore in partnership with older people. It sounds like everyone's got very good stories, good evidence about this, how the funding of funerals can become more affordable for everyone. Now, is there anything you want to change about that recommendation or add to? I think the prepayment thing is interesting. We could maybe add a wee bit about that. Yes.
Margaret Mitchell from Dumfries and Galloway. A few years ago, most people would have had some kind of insurance towards their funeral. Now that seems to have gone by the way, which is a shame really, because even if it didn't meet the whole amount, at least it covered part of it. Now, coming up to the funeral plans, I think you have to be careful, but you have to read through everything very, very carefully to make sure that all your wishes are covered. And when you come to I won't call them fripperies, but the flowers, some flowers can be extraneous to the funeral. They're not absolutely necessary, so therefore you don't have them included. But if I have a funeral plan, and if I only last another 10 years, I'm quitting. So that's one way forward. I don't think of it as a scam, but you have to be careful. And it's something that if you're approaching by yourself, rather than someone approaching you about it, then you're much more informed. So I think sometimes we expect too much from the government. We have to take some responsibility ourselves. Well, yes, but the funeral plans that they had in the old days, the penny policies, whatever they were, it gave the person the peace of mind, and very often it came at a cost. I mean, a penny policy was a fortune to some people, and but it was their way of taking care of their deaths.
Thank you. I just had a wee point here first. Thank you.
Yeah. I think really what we need to do here is look at what we mean when we say funeral. What do we actually want from the words funeral? Because we're talking about flowers costs, we're talking about money up front, we're talking about funeral plans, we're talking about funeral plans that haven't actually worked, haven't covered the whole thing. So I think I would like to see us start talking about the definitive funeral. What do you want in a funeral? And then get it down on here.
There's 2 points down at the bottom there, and then our colleague from QMU.
Nancy Innes, I didn't give my name, Nancy Innes from Perth. My point, I understand the lady about your funeral plan, but my argument is it doesn't come the day you need to pay it to the funeral undertaker, because they won't have the funeral until it is paid in full. And I went with my brother to pay £4,000 for his wife's aunt only this year. And it was the cooperative that they went to.
Interesting. Hi there.
Oh, hi. Hello, my name is Jean. I'm from Edinburgh. I'm a mature student at the Queen Margaret at the moment. One question, 2 parts. The first part is, since we touched upon the funeral, I just wondered, has the SOPA or any of the organization be in dialogue with the Funeral Directors Association? See, that's question 1. Question 2 is, I know this cost is like 2-way, our living cost, everything else cost, and also the operation or the profit, whatever you call it. I think there's another good forum. Maybe you can explore if any funeral directors or any association can explore the social enterprise, if that kind of avenue for somebody who really need help. Make it experimental, or try that.
Yeah. Maybe Alan can answer the question about whether or not there's been any dialogue so far with the a trade association for funeral directors.
I don't think we have we, in SOPA? It's something we've not really. Yes.
Well, could we add that to the campaigning action then?
Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
So can I just clarify something? What's being said? If you've got a funeral plan that's worth £5,000 and somebody dies who's close to you, you've still got to pay the £4,000 and then claim the money back from the funeral plan later.
I don't know, it wasn't a funeral plan. It's just a straightforward bill for £4,000. I don't know, it didn't have a funeral plan.
It sounds like there's a very complex landscape around this, doesn't it?
Do you know, Margaret?
We didn't. Well, my mother had one, and she died 4 years ago. And my brother and I, just everything went so smoothly. We didn't have to do anything. Just produce the certificate that she'd had from the original plan that she'd taken out. So therefore, it was very straightforward. We had nothing extra to pay or anything.
Okay, I'd like to draw this bit of the conversation to a close, but I've got 2 points then, quickly.
Right, and when I took out my funeral plan, which was 5 years ago, the funeral plan was with Charter 22, right, and I pay £22 a month, and that covers for me for all the bills from the funeral director. That's for the van you go in, the cremation, and a basic cardboard little thing for your ashes, and one car. But it is at that price 5 years ago. If I lived 15 years ago, I'm still getting it at £2,800. And that's the insurance part of it. So even if I live for another 10 years, it's still only £2,000. So I personally think they're great ideas.
It's just about local government and also the costs that local government's incurring in terms of the services that are around. But the cost to the customer in terms of the layer prices have been going up because local so it would be worthwhile, I thought, to ask COSLA to give us a paper on what it costs in each authority for a layer, and that in turn distinguishes the prices with the undertakers.
That's well, would you like to put that down as well?
As well, yeah.
We'll need to decide how much detail we report back, but all the issues that have gone, will go on the flip chart will be reported in some way back to SOPA to be taken forward. So that's great. I'd really like to move on now and see if we could select another issue for putting a campaigning action back to the plenary session at the end. And I recall that you're all still very interested in retirement, pensions and money matters. So if you maybe want to go back to the statement that Alan made, which is on the back of the programme. The other things that have come up under this topic are food, fuel, anomalies in pensions, personal assets at risk from scam phone calls, emails, etc., and even tradesmen and predatory professionals and family members. So there's a few issues there. Is there anyone that stands out for people, particularly people who maybe haven't spoken very much so far? Alan, have you got an idea?
Yeah. And if not, anomalies in pensions, the new pension scheme. We don't know how it affects us in any way, shape or form. I don't know if I'm going to get £144 a week. I don't know if I'm going to get £170 a week. All I know is that they're messing about with it and they haven't made it clear to where we actually stand. No pensioners groups that I've been attending on a majority do not understand the new rules.
The new rules is that if you're retired now, you don't get any more. You don't go on the new scheme. That's for people who haven't retired.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, that's one thing. There's bags of things in the new sector that we don't understand. I retired in 2005. What do I get? There's no thing with what you get or what you don't get. They've just said cut out dates if you were born before this day, but there's no explanation financially what you get or what you don't get.
Does anyone else have some views on this? Ladies?
We're from the Sikh community, and in Edinburgh we have old peoples, ladies, gentlemen, their house bands, and it's no day centre for Sikh community, and we're happy with the government, everything else, but we need a day centre for Sikh communities, no in Edinburgh, and we would like a request if we could can help us, please.
Okay, well, I think what we're going to do with issues like that is we're going to write them down and make sure that gets fed back to SOPA, and Glenda, who's the coordinator, who you know, will make sure that issue gets fed back. That's great. I don't know if anyone else has any other issues like that, particularly about other areas that we could add into that point before we move on.
is fuel. That's the biggest expenditure you have. And most people who are on low incomes are either on key meters, card meters, and they're paying the highest tariffs. It should be abolished. The Scottish Government should abolish it. I mean, it's just a rip-off for older people who are doing without heating because of this rip-off with these key meters now. If you pay direct debit, you get it cheaper.
Yes.
Why? Everybody should be on the same tariff, should get the same. And the Scottish Government is doing nothing, not one thing about it. Fuel poverty. They shout about it. They'll give you I got £140 there the other week. But that's how you got. But my estimated fuel bill is £1,200. That's just for gas. That's my estimated fuel bill. And the Scottish Government is letting the big six away with charging the poor people the biggest prices.
Answering that question, Chair, I got a letter saying, yes, you can get a cheaper electricity bill if you incorporate gas and electricity in one. So I said, well, the nearest gas to me is 40 miles away. How are you going to put some pipes into my house on? Oh, no, we can't do that. So I can't get cheaper electricity because there's no gas in the area.
That's discrimination.
Yes, you're right. It's just the Scottish Government.
Getting to the real things that's harming the people of Scotland.
Does anyone else have points to make on fuel poverty? You had something.
One of the things that has always concerned me as chair of a large pensioner organisation, and that is how many pensioners are getting food from food banks.
That's right. You're right.
Well,
I've tried to find out, and nobody can give me any statistics. So we don't really know if there are any pensioners getting food from food banks.
I can tell you in Dundee's one of the worst cities in Britain, probably for food banks.
Yeah.
I mean, they only made a TV documentary just last week on Dundee.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute disgrace. And there must be lots, not just older people, but younger people as well, suffering because of the fact that they've got to go to food banks.
Yeah. And yet they're getting all that work done in Dundee and all the massive amount of
well, that's another bone of contention as well.
It's a contentious issue.
Where the money's going.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Not a thing in their stomach. The poverty in Scotland is terrible, and we're one of the richest countries in the world. One of the richest countries, and we've got kids, Dundee, Glasgow, any place.
Edinburgh too.
We've got toasty clubs in the schools.
In our schools, we've got toast clubs. Kids in the morning go along early to school, and they've got a slice of toast or whatever it is for the breakfast. It's an absolute disgrace in a country that's so rich.
I also believe, as a matter of interest, I don't know if anybody knows about this, I have heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that under new government legislation, I'm talking about Westminster legislation now coming in at the back end of this year, if you are on a short-term rented contract, right, 6 months contract, you will not be eligible to vote in a general election.
That's right.
Now, that's what I've heard, so I don't know whether that's wrong or not.
We were told that at the Labour Party conference.
There you go.
That if you register in your home where you live, and you move away to a university, you won't be able to be on the register. Same as people in care homes. Every person in a care home now has got to individually register.
Yeah.
It used to be done by the care home. Used to register everybody and send it off. They're going to stop that at the end of the year. You've got to everybody. So someone with dementia doesn't know how to register. They will not be able to vote.
So does this mean then that an ordinary person with an ordinary person like, for instance, myself and Christine, who are renting a house, say, in for 6 month short-term assured contract, back end of this year, we will not be eligible to vote at a general election?
That's right.
Can I ask the question? Quite a lot of the young people, and because I do things with Housing Association, quite a lot of the young people, even in private rents, that is all they are given is a 6 month contract initially. So they're being deprived of something through no choice of their own.
Correct.
My goodness.
That everybody's shouting about and putting in inverted commas. I think it's about time. I'm afraid my own personal feelings about anything to do with the government or council, You can't be nice nowadays. Not at all. You've got to be aggressive.
Yeah, Christine.
Does this mean that Scottish Government that put out to students to vote at the age of 16, that's a lie? Because if a student at the age of 16 is in short-term contract housing, they'll be removed from the voters' roll?
I'm not quite sure if this is a devolved matter or not.
It's a Westminster law.
It's a Westminster law.
Right.
But actually come to Scotland, I don't know.
I think something sinister is happening here.
Yeah.
It's basically a poor law.
Folks, we've covered 5 issues in 5 minutes. So in the interests of making sure that SOPA get all the views, I'm going to suggest that there's a few questions that we maybe should put up and park them and get them fed to SOPA. One is, how many older people are using food banks? Yeah. That, to me, seems a good question. Excellent, thank you, Sarah. Another is this question about voting and renting. Yes, very good. The fuel poverty one, was there a question about fuel poverty? Is there some? Was it to do with equality of tariff?
Yes. On the quality of
okay.
We're getting
yep.
robbed.
Yeah, that strikes me as maybe more of a discussion. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, but there's an interconnection with that, because if you're in the short-term tenancy, you're more likely to have a prepayment meter as well.
Yes, well that's back to John's last point, isn't it? Yeah. That it sounds all very discriminatory towards people living in poverty and forcing more people into poverty through this. And then there was the big concern about the confusion over pensions. We have to pick one to develop a campaigning action around for SOPA. So could we maybe just, everyone has one vote, and if we read out these 4 issues, maybe we've got 7 minutes, so we could pick one issue and write a campaigning action, but the others won't be lost, please be assured. So if I could have a show of hands now, I'm trusting you all to only vote once, yeah? I think the day centre one in Edinburgh, I don't think we need to vote on that. I think that's a very specific issue to Edinburgh, and we will get that down for A City for All Ages. So the thing is about fuel costs, about setting a level playing field with the energy companies. Who would like to have that as a campaigning action? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, could you jot down the numbers, please? The one about voting and voter registration, asking more questions about 6. Okay, thank you, 6. The one about the statistics for food banks, I don't think we need to vote on that. We can ask about that, and that can be a question.
I can say that we started one about 2 years ago. It's absolutely snowballed. It's unbelievable. I stay in a working class district out down at Broomhouse, Side Hill. And I've watched it grow and grow, and it breaks your heart.
And the proportion of older people?
I would say 50-50. I think there's just as much children and families as there are older people.
But that's high. That's high. So we'll ask that.
140 million. That could have went to food.
Now, the voting registration, the confusion about renting and voting, who would like to develop a campaigning action around that one? That's 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, we're going to have a draw. And the other one was about the confusion over pensions and the new pension rules. And maybe Sarah would add that onto the bottom there. So who would like to add that as a campaigning action? That's 5. Okay, well, none of these will be lost. Please be assured that I sit beside Glenda Watt, who's going to be coordinating all of this, so we can make sure that they all get fed into the SOPA process, and we've got people who are on the committee right here. But for now, we're going to try and develop a campaigning action around the energy companies.
So, what we got? 6 and 2 5s?
Yeah.
Who didn't vote?
Any abstentions?
Yeah.
Abstentions?
Come on, we want to know who you are.
Sometimes it's hard to choose.
An abstention is a vote against. I want to know who they are.
Well, the funerals we've already done. So we've got a campaigning action on the funerals. So if your funerals is your thing, then you're ready.
Can I just put a caveat on your pensions one there?
Let's
and
listen
your
to
food banks. You said you were going to ask how many pensioners.
Yeah.
Right. Can I just just a little point that maybe a lot of you people don't know? I would like to know how many veterans are on that food bank list. The reason I'm saying this is, if the veterans that were entitled to a pension got a pension, would take them out of that thingy. Any serviceman who served before 1974, irrelevant how many years he did, before 74 you had to do 22 years service before you got a pension. But it was changed in 1975, right? They stopped that. What they did was, everybody who served 5 years will get a gratuity, after that you will get a pension. I left the army in November 1974, and in April 75 they changed the rules. I served 16 years in the army where I wasn't entitled to enter into a company
a pension scheme
to get a top up my pension. I wasn't allowed because I was a member of Majesty's Forces or regular soldier. Now these servicemen in the UK amounts to 250,000 people. Katie Clark, who used to be my MP for West of Scotland, Katie actually had in Parliament a discussion on this, and the Conservative government decided it would cost too much money to pay these people the pension, even although the pensioners, the veterans, were saying, we don't want a back pay to 1974. If you give us £1,000 for every year we've served and then start our pension on Monday, which only amounts to, like somebody like myself, about £20 a week, but the Conservative government still not to it. What I'd like to know is, of that 250,000 pensioners that never got a pension and are entitled to it, fairness, how many are Scottish?
Well, yeah, that's very good. We can easily add that onto the question and get an answer through SOPA to you all. So, just in the final 2 minutes, we might try for a campaigning action about the energy companies. So, the issue seemed to me to be about there's no level playing field for people who've got a computer versus people who don't have a computer versus people who don't have gas nearby, electricity, don't want to pay by direct debit. So SOPA, the campaigning action has to be around. SOPA calls on the Scottish Government to work with the work with Westminster. I mean, it's
paperless
work
bills.
With all parties. Work with all parties involved.
Okay.
It's paperless bills as well.
The problems with the electric or the energy companies. Computers is, I mean, we all or most of us like to use computers, but there are people out there didn't like using computers who like to have it the old ways. But when it comes to the power industry, that's a different kettle of fish entirely. It's a pain in the lives of everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're in your 90s or in your 20s. It's a pain in the backside, but if you forget my meaning.
Well, yes, thank you. Sorry. One more point, and then I think we'll have to wrap it up.
To do with the electricity as such, or the companies involved in providing this electricity. It's amazing if you phone up and ask if you're on the right tariff, how often you can have your tariff reduced. My point is, why don't the companies notify their users when there is a reduction so that everybody could benefit from that reduction?
Yeah,
it seems to me fair. Well, government policy could be changed. So my view is it should be that if there is any changes that reduces the amount that they require or are required to keep them in profit, because they'll not do it if they're not, then everybody should be getting notified. They'll no belong in notifying you if you're in debt, so they should notify you equally as well when you can benefit. But they don't. You've got to do the asking. But I can assure you, if you ask, there's usually a way they'll reduce it.
Well, would you guys...
Sorry, it is government policy. policy, and if they're not doing that and you find out they're not doing it, then you take them to the Ombudsman, because it is government policy. They should notify you if you're not on the lowest tariff.
I'll bet you right round this table that nobody here has had a letter saying that their electricity or their gas has been reduced or could be reduced.
So I think I would agree with you. I haven't. So can we just... yeah, so I think what we'll do is, would you trust the three of us to construct a campaigning action? Who said that? Who said that? Thank you so much. But I think I think it's been a really good discussion, and thank you very much for all your contributions. And I hope very much that you can see what was the result of the discussions on the board there, and Alan will be reporting them back on our behalf. And thank you very much for your thank you.